told her about it. I'm not sure whether she will or won't, called Unsolicited Mail. Have either of you heard about that? Because it was on 4 years ago as well.
No.
Either? Okay, so if I talk about a playwright called Ron Elisha, does that mean anything to you? No? Okay, he's written he's a really good writer. He's actually going to release something again very, very soon, which I'm very much looking forward to. If you get the chance, it's well worth seeing. Dave, in fact, I would commend this to you, and Greg as well. It's a company called Q44 Theatre. Greg, on your show, I've mentioned a couple of times that I've gone to the Abbotsford Convent. Do you recall?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, I haven't been there for a long time, obviously COVID, etc., etc. Q44 used to work out of the Abbotsford Convent when I mean, it's a very large, sprawling area, and, you know, it was quaint and so on, but they've now gone to chapel off chapel, and I think it's a really good move because this will make it, I dare say it'll popularise what they do even more, and I like what they do. This story, and we've seen this before, and I mean, there's many examples of it, unfortunately, in real life. A boss oversteps the mark, and the consequences of that are devastating. In this play, quite incendiary play called Unsolicited Mail, M-A-L-E. For the past couple of years, Wendy, played by Kim Valentine, who's now 38 years of age, has been the personal assistant to an accountancy practice, and specifically to the accountant Zeke, played by Russell Fletcher. She really enjoys the job. Zeke's middle-aged, as I say, she's 38. He's, I reckon, a good 10 years or so older, and he's been good to her, grateful for how she's managed to transform the office. One night, after she's put in a 12-hour day, the boss, Zeke, invites Wendy out for dinner. And what starts out as seemingly innocent flirtation leads to something far more sinister. So Wendy subsequently reveals all to her sister Chelsea, played by Gabriella Rose Carter, who's horrified. Zeke unloads to his life coach Noah, Anthony Scundi, who's praiseworthy. So, you know, when you've got interpretations of the truth, in other words, you firmly believe, I'm dealing with somebody at the moment who sort of swears, okay, well, this is what happened. And I turned around to him and said, well, I'm sorry, that's your interpretation. I see it totally differently. Now, have you ever got into that situation, Dave, where you have one take, somebody has something else, and you both swear it's the truth?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even though the art of communication is just that, things don't always work out. So it's interesting how people interpret what they do in this particular play. So while the interaction between Zeke and Wendy begins lightheartedly, it becomes decidedly uncomfortable. And there's a lot of humour in this piece. It's also dramatic and distressing. The actors, they really play their parts most convincingly. Kim Valentine's superb, really adept at capturing Wendy's emotional realisation of what went down and what it actually means to her or for her in the future. Gabriella Rose Carter's performance as the shocked and judgmental sister brings with it attitude and clarity, I should add. Russell Fletcher, well, he effortlessly realises Zeke's apologetic inadequacies, because that's what they are, while Anthony Scundi is a cardboard cutout of what I would call an alpha predator. And finally, you've got a fifth character, Will Atkinson. He lays it on thick as this pompous waiter who attends to Zeke and Wendy when they go out to dinner. It's skillfully directed by Suzanne Hayward. It's called Unsolicited Mail. It highlights the pitfalls of power imbalance in the workplace and the toll it all too often exacts. It's 80 minutes, no interval. I really think it's must-see. It's one of those productions, the subject of which is bound to spark lively conversation with your significant other. So if you haven't got a significant other, see it with somebody so you can talk about it afterwards. I mean, it's an interesting topic because Me Too had to come along, and it was developed sort of at the time of the, you know, when Me Too sort of became very, very big, and it needed to come along. So I understand its genesis. That's why it's very uncomfortable, and that's what it should be. So, you know, I admire the way that it's been put together. So he brilliantly transitions the narrative, Ron Elisha, in terms of the response that he has to the global Me Too movement. And how often do we find in situations, I mean, it's rather interesting, some workplaces you have got no choice other than you're not allowed to fraternise outside hours and whatever. You can't have a relationship. Other workplaces you can. So the rules aren't uniform. But this is what I put to you. If you weren't allowed to do that, Dave, there'd be a lot of relationships that would have never been started. And some relationships do work out. The question becomes the power imbalance, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely, yeah. There's a very big difference if you have just met someone in a bar or something like that to working with them or anything like that.
Yeah, and Greg, I mean, is there a rule at school? I mean, could you have a relationship? I'm not asking you your personal life, but could you have a relationship with your fellow teacher?
It happens a lot of times at schools. There's teachers who have relationships, even get married.
And there's no banning of that.
No.
Hang on. What if it's the principal? If you're whether you're a man or a woman or whatever, and whether it's a boy or boy girl relationship or neutral, I mean, are you? If the principal who basically pays your salary is having a relationship with you, is that okay?
As long as it doesn't affect the performance, I wouldn't.
Yeah, but there's no rule against it.
As long as neither party is married, I suppose you've got to have a bit of probity there with the principal.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing here, and we're almost out of time, but in a university setting, Greg, if a lecturer is not allowed to have a relationship, to the best of my knowledge, with a student.
Yeah, I know. I thought Dave wanted to mention a couple of films.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, Dave, I'm so sorry. You've